This week on Art in the Air features the 2025 Honorary Artist for the Love of Art Fair, Kei Constantinov, who's best known for her neo-medieval realistic paintings. Next, Jerry Ginther, whose work was recently exhibited at the Midwest Museum of American Art. Our spotlights on singer-songwriter Patricia Tyson discussing her December 5th concert at Chicago's Epiphany Center for the Arts.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, WVLP 103.1 FM, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air is heard every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Also heard on Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Media. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. We'd like to welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight. She's a musician from Maryville, actually does nursing as her actual career, but actually is a very gifted musician, songwriter, singer, and we're going to interview her about her upcoming event that she has in December 15th, and she'll tell us more about that. Please welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight, Patricia Tyson.
Aloha, Patricia.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
We're all doing great.
Day.
It is a great day.
So Patricia will actually had an earlier interview with us, a full interview, but this is just a reminder of her upcoming concert in this Spotlight segment. But just as, first of all, briefly about yourself, and then a little bit about the nonprofit, and of course, the information about your upcoming concert.
Okay. Well, I'm a professional musician by passion and a registered nurse by profession. I specialize in hospice care, and that has been my area of expertise for about 27, 28 years now. I do admissions now. I've narrowed it down, and I study classical piano starting at the age of 5, and I kept up my studies all the way through college. Studied voice lessons and theory, things like that. I was music education, choral. And choral music had a big impact, mainly because of high school. High school years were, high school. It was fun. Mm-hmm. But I was in Chicago All-City High School Choir. And it was a phenomenal network of musicians. Some of us are still in touch to this day from the 70s.
That's so nice.
Yeah. But our directors had a phenomenal impact on me. Also, I grew up in a Baptist church in Chicago called Pilgrim Baptist Church, which was a landmark. And it was known for the home of gospel music. And the singer-songwriter Thomas A. Dorsey was considered the father of gospel music. He wrote a song called Precious Lord, and it's known worldwide. And he would let me play for him as a teenager. I would sing with him. There's some recording somewhere of me singing with him. And his music had a tremendous impact. So when I decided to start writing music in the 90s, I started out as a Christian songwriter, but I didn't know what to write. So I just kind of opened the Bible and started writing what I read. And the music, I could easily go into that gospel area. Although I would go classical, I would try to write big anthems and things like that. My music began to transition to more social justice causes, but the flavor was still there. That gospel flavor was still there.
Right.
And so I decided to just embrace that. You asked also about my nonprofit. I've got to go a little quicker. I have a nonprofit called Shalom Music, which is bringing together music and medicine, bringing music to the bedside of patients that are under hospice care or palliative care. That will be done virtually. So it's bringing my two loves together. The last point I want to remember or talk about is my concert, which is my first concert. I have all this music that I've written that people haven't heard, and a lot of people don't even know I write music. So I decided, well, nobody's going to bang on my door and ask me to play, so I'll put myself in concert. So I rented the venue, which is Epiphany Center in Chicago. It's at 201 South Ashland Avenue, and it's Sunday, December 15th, from 5 to 7 p.m. Tickets can be bought at epiphanychi.com. And they start at $30 and up, depending on if you get a VIP seating. So I'm hoping people will come out and support. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to talk about it. And one other thing I want to mention, people are probably like, what's wrong with her voice? I have something called spasmodic dysphonia, and I find it really funny because I'm a singer, but I have these vocal tremors. So I just got my Botox treatment in my throat yesterday. So my voice is a little shaky.
Trying to find its place.
Yeah. So that's me. That's my story.
Right.
So is the concert also it's the introduction of your non-for-profit? Is it also a fundraiser?
Yes, it is. It's to introduce the nonprofit, and the pilot program will start next year.
And what exactly will the pilot program do?
Well, I will take a load of patients, a caseload of patients, and bring music to the bedside, not just music, but the performing arts. So
Right.
It could be instruments, or it could be dance, or it could be the visual arts.
Patricia, thank you so much for coming on Art of the Year Spotlight, December 15th, 2024. Tickets are available at the door or online at epiphanychi.com. That's epiphanychi.com. Thank you so much for coming on Art of the Year Spotlight.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Thank you. Both of you are great.
You can listen anytime to a complete Art in the Air feature interview with Patricia Tyson that aired on December 1st as an on-demand podcast by going to lakeshorepublicmedia.org's website, your preferred podcast provider, or on the Art on the Air website. Art on the Air Spotlight and the complete one-hour program on Lakeshore Public Media is brought to you by Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And as a reminder, if you'd like to have your event on Art on the Air Spotlight or have a longer feature interview, email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com.
Hi, this is Dorothy Graydon. I'm a contemporary artist in Northwest Indiana, and you're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP 103.1 FM.
We are pleased to welcome back Kei Constantinov to Art on the Air. We last spoke with Kei on November 23rd of 2018. Kei is an award-winning artist and writer, best known for her neo-medieval magical realism paintings dealing with courtesans, organ grinder monkeys, Moors, and vanished landscapes, and the work may be likened to historical fiction excerpts. She recently received an honorable mention at the 46th Midwest Museum of American Art and will be this year's honoree for the 2025 For the Love of Art Fair at the Century Center in South Bend, Indiana. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Kei. It's really great seeing you. And congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time. Wow, 2018. That was some time ago. Wow.
It's when it's like about our fourth show that we were doing. We did that one with Broadbent with you, and that's when we were in the little studio, and now we do it this way. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, you caught me when I'm in a different, sort of a different trajectory right now. I've rejoined the Palette and Chisel in Chicago, and I'm starting to do anatomical drawings. In fact, I'm very excited because on the 22nd, we go to Rush Hospital and work from cadavers. I mean, so this is something I've always wanted to do. I'm continuing the paintings, but actually what made me think I needed to do it was that I've started a series of nudes in medieval landscapes. And so I thought, well, let me sort of bone up, as it were, on the musculoskeletal system and all of that. And so I'm just really sort of recharging, and I'm really excited about doing that and looking at all the old Da Vinci, anatomical drawings and looking at contour, the contour drawing where it looks like an old engraving and that sort of thing. It's just really a new trajectory, as I said.
Well, that's great. But one of the things we always want to do in our show is we want to explore your whole history, your whole background, what I call your origin story, all the way back to where you were born, where you grew up, and your whole art history up to now. I always like to say how you got from where you were to where you are now. So tell us all about Kei.
Okay, so I was born on the Indiana Sea here in Michigan City, actually in Trail Creek, to a father who was sort of a frustrated artist, worked as an engineer, mechanical engineer instead. But he used to take me to Trail Creek to dig out clay and condition it, to do some sculpting. And he built me my first easel. And he taught me how to use paints and so forth. And so I was doing some still life work there. And actually, when my parents died, my brother gave me a big plastic bin full of my stuff from the house. And I found an old painting of some china that I had set up and was painting. And it's not half bad. And that was one of my first paintings. I have that. I have to frame that or something. So from there, I really did not like growing up in the Midwest and wanted to leave as soon as I could. So after high school, I did leave. And I found myself ultimately in Alaska. I traveled for 5 years and was just a crazy hippie, and then found myself in Alaska, and from there, I was up in the Brooks Range. Believe it or not, I was working on the Alyeska pipeline for a couple of winters, and then I entered school in Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. But first, I went to the Factory School of Visual Arts, the Factory for Visual Arts in Seattle. And that was a wonderful up on Capitol Hill. And then I got more serious about going for general studies, went to U of I, then transferred to WSU in Washington State, and then went on an exchange to UMass Amherst. And I kept sort of trading up because I was like, well, this is too easy. This isn't interesting enough. So I kept sort of trading up. And then I really fell in love with UMass. And my father was from Massachusetts. So I felt a certain connection there. And ultimately, I did my MFA there in chromolithography.
That is quite the wild journey. Like,
Sure
just your
is.
statement, I just wound up in Alaska. I mean, like, oh my gosh, how do you just wind up in Alaska?
Well, actually.
From the Midwest.
I took a trip to New York, fell in love with a Sicilian dentist in New York, and he used to close his office, and so he asked me to go with him. And then And then I just stayed. And then with the pipeline. So it's pretty crazy. I know it's a very, very much a crazy quilt.
Those are very interesting quilts.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So, and then I moved to New York right after graduate school and started teaching printmaking in Manhattan, in Chelsea, at the Bob Blackburn's printmaking workshop, which is quite famous. And I did that for 7 years. And at the same time, I was at the Art Students League pulling my own work. So I'd be at the Art Students League in the evening, which was a glorious place, and it still is. And so I did that for 7 years, met my Bulgarian opera producing husband in Washington Heights, where I was living. And we fell in love. We built a house in Westchester outside of Manhattan, where my son was born. And I tried to do work there, but it was just so isolating. And after my son was 3 years old, I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I said, I told my husband, I just really can't live like this. He was traveling. He was doing recordings at La Scala, and he was in, Japan. He had an office in Japan and Hamburg, Germany, and Manhattan. And so he wasn't home all that much. And I was just home alone with Yanko. And I told him, I really can't stand it anymore. So we moved to Chicago. I entered the University of Chicago, took some Latin, took a few courses, but I had a studio in the Fine Arts Building at that time too. So I would take Yanko to his little school, and then I would, rush over from Hyde Park and go into my studio and slam the door and be there for like 3 hours. And then it was very sort of nerve-wracking, those days. It was lovely to be in Hyde Park, but it was very hard to work because my son was young. And so anyway, so then my former husband decided that he found out about an acoustical position at not at U of M. We moved to Ann Arbor, okay, and we bought an old church, opened a bed and breakfast and a cultural center, and he went to work for a time at Northwestern, and during that time, so this is where I spent about 16 years as an innkeeper and as a director of the cultural center. So I wasn't actively doing artwork, but I designed, 22,000 square feet in sort of a neo-Gothic interior. I hosted opera, comic opera, and tango, Argentine tango, a couple of times a week. So that's where my son Yanko was born, and I loved it as a design project, but I did that for 16 years, and I found it was very hard to get out of that because we had modified this enormous property for a specific purpose. So when it came time to sell it, it was kind of difficult. So I wound up, pedaling that particular bicycle, or Titanic. It's more like the Titanic. I did that for 16 years until I could sell it. And then the rest is history. I mean, I thought, okay, now we've sold the B&B. What can we do? My son was very young. He was 21. Actually, he was 21 at that point, but he was very young when we moved in there. And so we hadn't spent a lot of time with family. And I thought, okay, now let's go back and just visit family. Let's visit family for a while and see what's going on with them. And my family home in Trail Creek happened to be for sale. And so I said to my brother, I'm going to take the for sale sign down, and we're going to just sort of, squat in the house for a time, visit some relatives, see what's going on, see if I can find any old friends, whatever. And at that time, I discovered the gallery that Larry and I were in that gallery together, the Southern Shore Gallery. And so I was asked to be on the board there. So that gave me sort of a sense of being placed. I started teaching when I started teaching English at the library. I had a really great writing group, and I wrote Mechtild's Medieval Adventures. I wrote that during that time, and we had a wonderful writing group, and the library gave us a conference room, and that went on for a year until just poof, it was over. One person had a second child. There was a person, actually former professor from Princeton, Lyon, I can't remember his first name, but he actually died. And then one of the people got breast cancer, and I was asked to teach art appreciation at Ivy Tech. Anyway, it was just poof. It all happened at once, and that ended. And then I was just in the studio, and I'm marveling now because I was in the studio for 10 years, and I don't regret it, of course. And I think my work progressed considerably during that time, and I made a lot of inroads. But I moved out of my next studio, which was at St. Mary's, I suppose it was about a year and a half ago now. And I'm just marveling that I spent that much time by myself. Honestly, it was very isolating. And now I'm just feeling like I really have to recapture some of that social time. So that was the reason that I have been on the train going back and forth to Chicago now. So
do you have a studio at St. Mary's or?
Oh, no.
Okay, so you did leave there.
I was there. Well, okay, I moved into the studio right before COVID hit. And then I had to sort of drive over there covertly because nobody was supposed to go anywhere. So I was like sneaking over there because it was a beautiful studio. I mean, it had like a 30-foot long bank of windows. It was beautiful, facing it was the biggest studio there. I got there firstly, so I had this sort of pick of the litter. It was facing, it had north-facing windows. It was like so perfect. And I thought, this is great. Initially when I first moved in, I took it because I thought, okay, now I can teach advanced techniques. And the whole thrust of it was taking the big studio was to get advanced students from Chicago. And I thought, well, heck, it's right on the train line. This is like perfect. And then, of course, COVID struck, and then nobody was going anywhere. And then when COVID was over, they were double tracking. And so we were getting no foot traffic whatsoever. And I would only see people. Most of the people who were there were either in their studios or they only came on the weekends. And so it was extremely isolating. And I just thought, why am I doing this? And so now I have a beautiful studio in my apartment, actually. I've commandeered most of the house as the studio. So that's where I've been working from.
So it's really this new trajectory or this new interest actually just melds so well with your style. So the new anatomical, will it be still in the style that we've come to know you for, or are you doing a complete departure from that?
Well, no, I mean, when one has a style, I mean, I guess it just comes out whatever you do, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to try to make it look like something that was done in Padua, or something,
right.
Or Amsterdam or something like that. I just want to use the anatomical drawings and paintings. I just want to incorporate them into landscapes, as they did in Padua, as you know. They're beautiful. And I just think that's just such a venerable part of art training and art history. And of course, that's the important stuff that fell out of the equation when I was in art school.
Right.
So I'm just trying to backtrack and recapture that. And I'm also right now studying online. Well, I have mentorship with Stephen Bauman. So I'm doing atelier studies with Stephen Bauman. And this is, I am part of 33 Contemporary Gallery and 33 PA, Poets and Artists. So there is mentorship. They have all and I'm on Patreon, okay? So through Patreon, I have several mentors, actually. I was with Arthur Gain a little bit for a couple of months, and there are a lot of opportunities through Patreon, of course, for studying. So I'm just trying to get some other skills under my belt, the more important atelier skills that have fallen out of the equation. So I'm backtracking right now.
That sounds actually comforting and wonderful. It sounds like it feels so natural.
Oh yeah, and I am still showing, but I find that the people, if you go plein air painting, you find that the people who did commercial art are the best plein air painters because of their experience having to do it all the time under pressure and having to strive for accuracy, right, in the drawing. And when you join, Oil Painters of America or Allied Artists, which I belong to both of those groups, the best painters are the people who studied at the ateliers at, Chicago Academy, which has closed. I just found that out. Chicago Academy has closed. I think because they're saying it's because the tuition was so ungodly high, and people want to work with AI, and they want to work with Procreate, and the school would not update to accommodate those sorts of things. And so they lost a lot of students, I guess. But New York Academy, all the academies, the important academies are, of course, where the best people are coming out from. But the odd thing is that the best artwork sales are coming from the contemporary art world. So 33 Contemporary is very well positioned. Sergio Gomez and Didi Menendez and are two main forces in those, in 33 and PA. Oh, and Zhu B, of course, as well. But although Sergio has left Zhu B and they've opened a Miami location. So I'm involved with them as well, and they sell a lot of artwork, and it's contemporary artwork. I mean, it's realism, but it's not atelier realism, So anyway, I would just like to be swimming in that stream, more in that atelier stream. So I'm still skill building, which is kind of fun to go back to that.
Now, you recently, in the last year or so or something, were working on like a movie project. Can you briefly tell us about that in our last few minutes here?
Well, I want to re-edition my book. Well, it's a novella, actually. Mechtild's Medieval Adventures, an adult fairy tale, it's called. So I was trying to interest some people in making it into a movie. So I did a book trailer and a movie trailer. And that's what I had sent you, the movie trailer. So I plan to re-edition that book by the year's end. So with some really medieval wood carvings and lino blocks done by a man in England that I met on Instagram. So that will be on Amazon, KDP.
Very good.
Exciting times, Kei.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I feel excited. I feel like, there's a lot to look forward to. So I'm blessed in that way, I think. So.
We have a little over a minute left. We want to give you a chance to tell us about how people can find your work, either social media, websites, and if you have any exhibits coming up, like toward the end of this year or early next year.
Okay, well, at the Midwest Museum of American Art in Elkhart, I have a piece that won an honorable mention. They've been very good. I mean, they've awarded me every time I've shown. It's just kind of embarrassing. In the Peony Garden, I have a painting. That's the one that won the award last time. That will be there until, I know you wanted exact dates, but it'll be until somewhere right after Christmas it will come down. The Alliance of American Artists, I have something online, the 2024 Associate Online Show until May of 2026. That is on their site. And then I'll be in the member show at Chesterton Arts Center, which opens December 14th is the opening for that. And in the meantime, I have some other things. I don't want to speak about them because I it's not certain, but I have some other things through Palette and Chisel and 33PA that I'll be doing.
Well, that sounds great. We appreciate you coming back on Art in the Air. Kei is going to be the For the Love of Art Fair featured artist for 2025, and we'll have a link on our website to click on her picture, and it'll take you to her website there. Kei Constantinov, thank you so much for coming on Art in the Air and sharing your art journey.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kei.
Art in the Air listeners, do you have a suggestion for a possible guest on our show? Whether it's an artist, musician, author, gallery, theater, concert, or some other artistic endeavor that you are aware of, or a topic of interest to our listeners. Email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com.
This is Dawn Diamondopoulos of Highland Arts Council, and you're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM and on WVLP 103.1 FM.
We would like to welcome Jerry Ginther to Art on the Air. Jerry is an award-winning artist in drawing and painting. He is also an avid photographer and cyclist. Most recently, he won Best in Show at the 46th Midwest Museum of American Art for his drawing, Making Decision 2024. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Jerry. It's very nice seeing you again.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Well, we really enjoy having you on the show, and congratulations on the award at the museum there, where Esther was also in the show. But we want to know about your background, Jerry. I always like to say your origin story. Tee it up by saying how you got from where you were to where you're now. So tell us all about Jerry.
Well, it doesn't go very far. I've always lived in the Rochester area. I grew up and went to school here. I went to college. I went to the Heron School of Art at IUPUI in Indianapolis with no particular direction. And when I graduated from there, again, I had no particular direction to go. So at that time, it's a matter of, okay, I need money, so I need to look for work. And it brought me back to the Rochester area and finding work here. And not a whole lot to say beyond that.
Well, I want to go to elementary school with you. What were you like in elementary school, or what was your home life like? Were your parents artistic? Were you drawing? Were you sketching? What were you doing?
Well, elementary school was at several schools, actually. Living out in the rural area of Rochester in Fulton County at that time in the 50s, they still had country schools. They were not condensed or conglomerated. I guess that's how it is. Consolidated. There we go. So I went through 1 through 3 in the same school that my mother went to, actually, in the country, and my aunts and uncles, and then transferred to another country school. And in a year's time, they closed that one before they consolidated and brought all the rural kids into Rochester City to the elementary schools and high school there. So it was kind of a here, here, and here, not really knowing why at the time, just knowing that we had to go to a different school. As far as my parents are concerned, artistically, if my dad couldn't make it with a hammer. It wasn't going to happen. And my mother, she was kind of one of those, she likes to knit, crochet, and paint by number, that type of person. So, exploring the arts was kind of at that age, there wasn't anything else to do other than, color in a coloring book or draw with paper and pencil.
So were you exploring the landscape then? I mean, how did your creative self express itself? And maybe, you wouldn't have called it that at the time.
I think it was seeing what others were doing that I could do that, whether somebody was drawing an airplane or a bird. And so little by little, I tried to do my version of what I saw somebody else do. But it really didn't amount to anything. Then in about fourth grade, my mother bought me a John Nagy drawing kit. And so that was a whole new world all of a sudden to see what you could do with pencil and charcoal. And then I started looking, in the library for things like that. And so it was kind of, finding out that there are different things you can do, that I wasn't aware of at the time.
I know it's kind of the same for me. Like my elementary school, and actually even through, not until seventh grade, I didn't have gym class or art class, but it was something that I was exposed to at the house. My mom also, like yours, she was knitting and crocheting. And I had other aunts who were artistic. So at least I had exposure to it, but I didn't get that initial stuff at school.
No, I would say that it was just, it wasn't any kind of constructed, meaningful, I don't know how to put it. I just never really thought about it. It was just something I would do, set aside, go do something else, make a model airplane or glue a car together or something. And even in high school, it still really didn't have that much meaning to me. I wasn't that interested in art history. I wasn't that interested in the technical side of how things were done, but it was just something I would do and go along with the flow, what others were doing. And of course, being an immature teenage kid, I tended to do radical things that were not, let's just say, painting a picture of Adolf Hitler in art class in front of a Polish art teacher was probably not the most ethical thing to do. And in hindsight, I didn't really realize what I was doing, and so look at it now and it's like, oh my gosh, how could she even tolerate what I was doing? But nothing was really said, But it wasn't so much her, and I never really understood the correlation between that till later in life. Right. It's like art history. I heard a lot of things early in life that made no sense to me, and I was not interested. But later in life, all of a sudden, the pieces started falling into place, and okay, this makes sense now. This is interesting when it was not interesting. And then once something becomes interesting, I tend to pursue it or go after that.
So did you find a particular artist interesting during that? Because you have a very distinctive style. So
not in the early years, no. But it was like later in my early 20s when all of a sudden, I would go back and reread art history and see pictures and books. And I've been to the Art Institute in Chicago a number of times. And so I know what some of this looked like in person, which, pictures do not do a lot of this justice. And then I think it was the French Romantic period with painters like David and Ang. And all of a sudden, what did these pictures really look like? I mean, why are they famous? There was an exhibit that came to Detroit in the 70s, and I went to see that, and it's like, okay, I've got to see more. So the following year, I got a ticket to go to Paris, and I just took off. I just wanted to see what it really looked like. And I thought, well, while I'm there, I could go ahead and go to Rome and see the sites there. But that was at the time that there was the Pope. The second Pope had passed away. The train stations were in chaos. Italians were flooding, all the trains trying to get out of there, and I'm not speaking any of the languages. So I went from Paris to, well, let's see, where can I go where nobody else is going? So I went to Switzerland.
Ah.
And in Geneva, Switzerland, I saw a Salvador Dali exhibit there. And then I went back to the Louvre, and again, I saw what I wanted to see, and once I was satisfied, then I flew home. So it's like when things like that happen, that if there's a reason, I'll go do it, But otherwise, yeah, I just do what I do, and I don't get too concerned about anything or anybody else.
I want to ask about your photography too. Explain, how that is. First of all, does that inform your other painting work? But tell us about what you do with photography.
Early on, I was interested in photography as how do people get these pictures they get, the quality they get, and so studying that. And then once I got into realizing, okay, cost is a factor. Okay, you are limited to what you can do financially, unless you have an open-ended budget. It's kind of like you can learn to fly an airplane, doesn't cost anything, and it's easy to do. But once you've gotten to that point, okay, can you really go on farther? And photography was the same way with me. I realized I could not afford $20,000 lenses and all that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of like weddings, and I guess it more drifted into the area of I like playing with imagery, and there's so much you can do with that. And then going back into old photos and family history and pulling things out of negatives that were lost, that kind of became an adventure in itself. And then into 8mm film, which a lot of it is, faded away, and trying to restore that is another aspect of it.
Did you move it into digital photography at all, or has this all been film?
I really didn't do that much in the film area. I'd gotten a nice Canon camera to use, and it took great pictures. But once digital caught on, and I started understanding what was going on there, and my son, who was into it way ahead of me, loaded Photoshop on my computer and said, just play with it. Mm-hmm. And so that was how I learned. And, it opens up a whole new area to work in once you understand the principles of that.
Well, and in Photoshop, they carried over many of the things that, along with Illustrator, that are, in terms of chemical photography and film photography, use many of the same techniques, except it's all done electronically. And I know I'm a photographer, I deal with Photoshop a lot, but it's once you've mastered like the movement of the mouse and things like that, the tools are very similar in terms of cropping, in terms of all the things you do. And of course, there's a lot more you can do with it. So do you do that anything more now, like in the artistic area with your photography?
I use it when I need to create a reference. I constantly take pictures with my film, with my camera, with my phone. There, I'll get it out wherever I go. So I've got tens of thousands of pictures, archived away, in hard drives. So that when I need a reference or something, I'll go back and I can. If there's something I want to do, I can go find it, in that archive, as opposed to, looking online for something. There's just no end to the material and the manner in which you can use that material. But like with film photography, I also, in the beginning, was able to learn to, use a black and white, developing and enlarging and trying to understand how that worked. But again, I saw the limitations as to how far I could go with this, and and not being really practical with all the chemicals and the paraphernalia that goes with it. So I still have it all boxed away somewhere, you know.
I know I have boxes of my old film cameras and myself. In fact, I am a Canon shooter, and I skipped the entire autofocus era in film because I had such a huge investment, as you said, in lenses. And, you know, I have all these FD lenses, and it's like, you know, and so finally when the Canon 5D came out, which was the first affordable, I say that jokingly, full frame camera, because I think I paid $3,600 for that camera at the time. I wanted to have a full frame, camera. So that was my first, but I had been working in digital prior to that, because anything I had done shot on film, I had also the lab send to me as a disc with digital images. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I love the ability to step from scanning to, whether I use a scanner or whether I use a camera and to take an image and transfer it, to the computer. There's just so many ways to go about that. When you have that need, especially restoring something, or somebody needs a copy of this, or hey, I saw that, would you do this for me? And so it's a whole other world. But I know the basics. I really haven't dove into it headlong and got immersed in it. I'm not a diehard Photoshop user. I just understand the basics. I've got the different suites, but Photoshop Basic 6 or something works great for me for my purposes.
Right.
You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM, on WVLP 103.1 FM. So, Jerry, I want to time travel back. I wasn't quite through with Europe. I wanted to know, what were your impressions of those European museums, and did it satisfy the reason you wanted to go and see them in person?
Those paintings and painters and sculptors that are famous for a reason. And when you stand in front of it, I think you can understand it much better. I've made the comparison before about having stood in front of the Mona Lisa and looking at it, and the feeling I got was I was not that impressed with it. Okay, it's a painting, it's a piece of antiquity, unimaginable historic value. But then when I walked in front of a painting by Francis Bacon, I saw some in Detroit and also in Washington, D.C. at the National Art Gallery. I don't think most people would like his imagery, but I was transfixed. It's like, okay, I don't know what it is, but I have to stare at this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the paintings from antiquity stand out for a reason, and it's like Norman Rockwell. You can see all the illustrations you want and copies you want, but unless you have been right in front of the actual paintings, I don't think you can really understand the feel they give you. And I was fortunate in the 70s, they'd had one of the largest collections of Norman Rockwell paintings, a traveling exhibition that I got to see. Mm-hmm. And I was never so much impressed by anything else as what I saw there that day in Indianapolis.
One of the tricks of Norman Rockwell, and I use this in photography just as a side note, is when you're posing people, he always told people to raise their eyebrows. And if you look at all his paintings, the reason is it opens up your eyes, so when you raise the eye. So when I'm actually doing portraiture, in fact, I just did a session with a woman and saying, now raise your eyebrows. And so sometimes you have to keep reminding them, but it really gives you, and look at all his photos, you'll see these kind of wide open eyes. So, yeah.
What was interesting is to look at a lot of his work where you can see the actual corrections on the canvas and how it affected the image. And then also there were just images that were just so perfect. It looked like it came off a printer. I mean, I just don't know how he did it. It's just unimaginable. So I was impressed by that. But like I said, there's I walked, and when I was in the Louvre, I walked to the basement looking for a water fountain, which at that time was apparently hard to find. And I don't drink wine, and I don't drink pop or anything. And so I was looking for a water fountain. And I walked into a little room, and there was 4 statues done by Michelangelo, just standing right there, just out of nowhere. And again, it was just something that grabbed me, that you could not understand how this feels unless you stood there and looked at them,
Yeah, the texture of the marble, it is. I agree. I like seeing the maker's mark, or lack of mark, as it may be.
No, I was just surprised. I wasn't that particularly interested in looking at his work, but once it was right there in front of me, it's like, wow, okay, this, I just can't imagine, doing this, how he did this. Which, in a side note, last winter, I did not know that there was a difference between the Agony and the Ecstasy book and the movie. I didn't know they were not. I thought they were the same thing all these years. I mean, I'd seen the movie with Charlton Heston playing Michelangelo, and I thought that was it. And when I found that out, I went and got the book last winter and read it. And all of a sudden, like, wow, this is not Charlton Heston. The movie does not exactly follow the book, which was supposedly, closer to the true story. So now I've kind of got it in my mind that a trip to Italy would be nice to do now, to see Florence and to see Rome.
It would be so beautiful. So now, with all these experiences, when did your own personal style emerge?
I think I've always been more of an explorer with media. I want to see what something does, whether it's enamel or watercolor, or oil, or pencil, tempera, anything. I just play with it to see what can I do with it. But I think as time went by, like, there's 2 ways to look at things. Do I want to make this realistic? Do I want to try to copy something, or do I want to try to make this represent something? Is one approach. The other approach is that, how do I recreate something that I can't really see? And so then there's a matter of rhythm and a fluidness in life, that I start with that, and like working from memory and trying to recreate what I think I remember, and not necessarily copying it exactly or trying to do a perfect representation, but to insinuate it. And so over time, little by little, I think that's how it came about. This layering, this compiling of imagery. Like, I would go one direction with an idea, but then I see another direction to go. So why not go there at the same time? So in a lot of these drawings, there are a lot of hidden things.
Oh, completely hidden, even hidden
And
within the garment.
And then also on the outside, that there are image on a macro level, that those are purposeful. A lot of the inner stuff are just coincidental. But anyway, it's just kind of a fun way to relax and try to, many cases, document something that I saw, or sometimes I saw yesterday, or sometimes I saw 50 years ago. It just depends on, the mood I'm in at the time, or how something lingers in my head. I still have a couple images that have been lingering from our little trip to Washington, D.C. in August, and been trying to get those out of my system.
Well, they're incredibly complicated and intricate, the drawings. And so when you say you're relaxing, just like when I looked at, the body of work, it's just like, whoo, they are very intense. And
where my wife would go and grab a book and read for half an hour, I do that with a pencil and paper or paintbrush. It is relaxing, but paper, or pencil and paper, is the easiest thing to pick up. I keep sketchbooks everywhere, whether it's in the truck or the car or the living room. I leave these books lay around, or even right here beside me, because it's just handy. when I'm in the mood to paint or work with other materials, and then there's preparation.
Well, Jerry, we're out of time, believe it or not. That 23 minutes just flows real fast. Real quick, do you have any upcoming exhibits?
No. I don't really exhibit anything. They generally go in a pile in a box, and but it's nice to have someplace where I can, to exhibit.
Right.
I usually try the Wabash, the Honeywell exhibit in the winter time, and then I usually look forward to the fall exhibit at Elkhart.
Right. Well,
that's pretty much it.
Well, we appreciate coming on there, Jerry Ginther, artist, and find out information about him on our website too, and clicking on his picture. Jerry, thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Coming next week on Art on the Air features two artists in the 2025 For the Love of Art Fair. First with oil artist Lori Shimmer Carpenter, whose renderings of calming and nostalgic places, and next Ed Johannenmann, whose artwork combines photography, woodworking, and glass. Our spotlight's on award-winning journalist and author Joseph S. Peach, sharing his newest book, Lost East Chicago and Indiana Harbor. We'd like to thank our guests this week on Art on the Air, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Art on the Air is also heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at WVLP.org. If you have a smart speaker like Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, or Apple Siri, just tell it to play Art on the Air to hear the latest episode. Our Spotlight interviews are heard every Wednesday on Lakeshore Public Media. Thanks to Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operation for Lakeshore Public Media, and Greg Kovach, WVLP's Station Manager. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. We'd like to thank our current underwriters for Lakeshore Public Media, Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And for WVLP, Walt Reidinger of Paragon Investments. So we may continue to bring you Art in the Air. We rely on you, our listeners and underwriters, for ongoing financial support. If you're looking to support Art on the Air, we have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA, where you can find out how to become a supporter or underwriter of our program in whatever amount you are able. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. You'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. If you're interested in being a guest or send us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Brechner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show